And away from the war in Gaza, at least 27 people have died and dozens more wounded after 2 bombs exploded near a candidate's office in the Pakistani province of Balochistan. The first blast killed 18 people in the district of Pushin North or Quetta City. The second left 9 people dead in Kila, Safula, about 150 kilometers to the east. The vote has been marred by violence and claims of poll rigging. And former Prime Minister Imran Khan is barred from contesting. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the attacks in front of an independent candidate's party office in Pushin, a town about 100 kilometers southeast of the Afghan border. The provincial authorities say 25 people were also wounded. And let's bring in the VOA's Pakistan Bureau Chief, Sarah Zaman, who joins us live now on the program. Sarah, what have authorities said about those behind the blast? And what else are you hearing?
Well, so far, no group has taken responsibility for these attacks. Authorities are still looking into who is responsible for it. And these are areas that have seen violence in the past. And unfortunately, Balochistan overall is a restive province. And right now, Pakistan is about to have elections. So security is a concern, and security is on high alert in much of the country. So authorities are still looking into it, but they are saying that this should not this is not going to deter tomorrow's vote, and that people should come out and vote, even though the areas have been struck by violence.
And Sarah, the number of those who have died is really on the high side. We understand at least 27 or 28 people have died. Talk to us about the area where the blast happened and perhaps why.
Well, the death toll has now risen to, in fact, 30, 18 in one place and 12 in the other. Both of these areas fall in districts that border with Afghanistan. And there is cross-border violence. There have been cross-border attacks, and these areas have seen violence. But in the Pashin district, the place where attack today, that is an area that specific area is somewhere which hasn't really seen this type of an attack in the past. And it happened on the election campaign of an independent candidate, not somebody associated with any party. So this is also worrying people in that part of the country. And the other attack happened on Jamiyat Ulama Islam, JUI's candidates' election campaign. And this is a party that has come under attacks in the past as well. So both of these areas border Afghanistan, and therefore they have seen violence in the past as well.
And so far, is there any evidence whatsoever connecting the blast to the arrest of the former Prime Minister, Mr. Khan, who we understand is not allowed to contest in these elections because some school of thoughts understand that his supporters may be aggrieved by that decision?
Well, Imran Khan has been in jail since last August, so his arrest is not anything new. And the latest sentences that he was awarded, he was given those sentences while in jail. So he hasn't come out, and his party has also made a very conscious effort to give this message to his supporters to stay calm, to not resort to any kind of violence. The last time we saw any violence from PTI, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf supporters, was May 9th of last year, when they stormed military installations to protest Imran Khan's arrest. But since then, we have not seen any violence from his supporters. And these are the type of attacks that you usually don't see from aggrieved supporters of any party. These are acts of violence in which, at least in one of the cases, explosives were placed on a motorbike. And that's a very typical way of attack that we have seen other militant organizations use in Pakistan. So far, there is no indication, and authorities have not said anything about any indication that this could be from any aggrieved political supporters of former Prime Minister Imran Khan.
I mean, I would like us to speak a bit more about Mr. Khan, because he's not contesting in the polls. And can I ask you, just how will that affect the country's general governance?
Well, as far as Imran Khan not being able to contest, that has really raised questions about the transparency of this poll, this election. Khan was convicted last year in August of corruption and was sentenced to 3 years in jail and was also disqualified for running for office for 5 years. His prison sentence was suspended, but he was never allowed to leave the prison because there were many other cases in which he was already regarded as arrested, and then the proceedings for those cases also happened within prison premises. And in the last about 8 days, we have seen that he was handed down sentences, very harsh sentences in three different cases. He was given a 14-year sentence, a 10-year sentence, and a 7-year sentence for corruption, for mishandling state secrets, and for an illicit marriage. So what is happening to him? And then we also see what is happening to his party. His party is fragmented. It's having a very difficult time running its election campaign. It doesn't have a unified election symbol, which helps voters identify a party very easily on a ballot paper. And then we've also seen that the party has struggled to campaign freely. When they've tried to campaign in public, they've either not been given permission to hold rallies, or they have seen a large number of their supporters get arrested from those rallies. And when they have tried to hold events online, internet service has gone down in Pakistan and social media platforms have become inaccessible. So his party has continuously faced difficulties in running its campaign, which is why there are serious doubts, according to observers, about the transparency of this poll. United Nations Human Rights Office has expressed concern. The Pakistani Independent Human Rights Commission has also said that there are little signs that this poll will be credible. So Imran Khan and his party not being able to participate fully, not being able to get a level playing field like other political parties, has raised some very serious questions about the credibility of tomorrow's elections.
And this is not the first time electoral violence or violence of any sort has, arisen in Pakistan. But it seems getting the right leadership remains a huge challenge for the country. Why is that so? And the second part of my question would be, how exactly is the state of the security situation right now at the moment as we speak?
Well, in Pakistan, military plays a very, very important role in politics. So when you are looking at why Pakistan has governance problems or why Pakistan has had difficulty in having a consistent government, you have to look at Pakistan's history. Hardly any government, hardly any prime minister has been able to finish his 5-year term. There have been, two governments in the recent past that were able to complete their terms, but even they had to switch their prime minister almost halfway through, because in Pakistan, the military has a lot of sway, a lot of influence on parties. And when a prime minister or a government begins to fall out of favor with the country's powerful military, then it becomes very hard for them to stay in power. So that is something we have seen happen again and again. Even former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, who's the front runner right now in tomorrow's elections, he was the prime minister 3 times and he was never able to complete his 5-year term as the prime minister. That's because pretty much every time he had a falling out with the military. We saw the same happen with Imran Khan. He came with a pretty decent mandate. He enjoyed a very good relationship with the military, something that he touted a lot in the first couple of years of his premiership. But then he fell out of favor with the military as well. And since he was ousted from office in April 2022, then he had a very public falling out and he went on the offensive. And many people see the crackdown that's happening on his party as military backed. It's very obvious to a lot of observers. A lot of observers say that it's quite obvious that the military is angry with Khan, and especially what happened on May 9th was something that was unprecedented in Pakistan's history, and attacking military installations. So that created an environment in which the military struck back pretty harshly. So this is, these are the things that happen in Pakistan that make it difficult for governance. But as far as security is concerned, close to 600,000 security personnel will be deployed across Pakistan tomorrow.
And Sarah, allow me to squeeze in one more question just before I let you go. I mean, the country as well is also experiencing a severe economic crisis. I understand that one of the foremost challenges gripping the economy is the rising inflationary pressure, as well as price instability in the country. So I'm just curious to find out how exactly will the polls, or what exactly does the poll mean for the country's economy?
So the biggest issue for people in Pakistan right now is the economy, and Pakistan's economic crisis is really a matter of survival for Pakistanis and for Pakistan's economy. And I'll give you an example. Prices are about 30% higher right now than they were a year ago. So people are dealing with back-breaking inflation. Utility bills like electricity and gas are just skyrocketing, and people are really struggling to pay those bills. And in the larger picture, Pakistan itself is also under mounting debt burden. It's really struggling to pay that. And last year, Pakistan avoided default by the skin of its teeth. And then the IMF came and gave Pakistan a 9-month standby arrangement. It was about a $3 billion bailout that Pakistan got. And right now, whoever wins tomorrow's election, their first challenge is going to be to come up with a new plan with the IMF, to have a new deal with the IMF, and to also find ways to pay at least $25 billion in external loan repayments this year. So whether you look at an average Pakistani household, it's struggling. And then when you look at Pakistan's overall economy, Pakistan's ability to stay afloat, Pakistan is also struggling mightily when it comes to economy. And so this is the biggest challenge that whichever government is formed as a result of this election is going to have to tackle head on.
And it's a fine place to anchor a conversation with you. Sarah Zaman, VOA's Pakistan Bureau Chief. Thank you indeed for your analysis and perspective of the program. And please stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, so there you go. You're watching The World Today. We're due for a break, but just ahead, ECOWAS calls for steps to restore electoral calendar in Senegal. We have more in just a moment. Please stay with us. You're welcome back. And in royal news, Prince William is back to his itinerary on the royal calendar, performing an investiture ceremony at Windsor Castle. He's also attending a fundraiser dinner for London's Air Ambulance charity this evening. The Duke of Wales has had to return despite being with his wife Kate, who is recovering from an abdominal surgery for 2 weeks ago, especially after the palace announced the king's cancer diagnosis. Charles's illness comes at an awkward time for the House of Windsor. The king, who ascended the throne just 17 months ago, has pledged to reduce the cost of the monarchy, in part by keeping a lid on the number of working royals whose public duties are supported by taxpayer funds. But with two of the most visible family members out sick, it will be more challenging for the family to keep up. In addition to the widely publicized pomp and ceremony of royal processions and state visits, the Windsors attend hundreds of little-known events every year to recognize the accomplishments of average people and mark local events such as the opening of libraries and community centers. Hundreds of charities cherish royal appearances, which give their good works visibility and credibility among potential donors. As for the King Charles III, his weekly meetings with the Prime Minister going forward will be over the phone from now. This was confirmed by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's spokesman, who says they are going to get into the habit of commenting on the Prime Minister's conversations with the King. The spokesperson did not say whether the arrangement is a one-off or if it will continue during the King's treatment. The private meeting is normally held in person in Buckingham Palace to discuss government matters, but details are not released, and it is an established principle that the monarch remains neutral or political on political issues. However, he is able to advise and warn the Prime Minister when necessary. And away from the UK, a jury has found a Michigan mother guilty of involuntary manslaughter for failing to stop her son from carrying out a deadly school shooting. 45-year-old Jennifer Crumbley is the first U.S. parent convicted of manslaughter over a mass shooting carried out by their child. Prosecutors accuse her of being negligent in allowing her son to have a gun and ignoring warning signs. Her husband, James, is facing a separate trial on the same charges. He has pleaded not guilty. Their son, now 17, is serving life in prison for killing 4 classmates at Oxford High School in Michigan on the 30th of November 2021, and 7 people were also injured in the shooting. Well, we'll have more on that story in just a moment as we're live in Washington. But stay with us here as now snowstorms and freezing rain have disrupted transportation in large parts of China as millions of people travel for the Lunar Year holiday. Hundreds of flights and train services have been cancelled, while motorists have been stranded on frozen airways for days now. The holiday sets off the largest annual human migration as millions in China travel to their hometowns. Travel has also picked up after COVID-19 curbs were lifted over a year ago. Authorities in China expect 480 million trips to be made for the new Lunar Year, also known as the Spring Festival. The volume is 40% higher compared to the previous year. China's Meteorological Service has warned of the worst winter weather since 2008. The country's central region, including provinces like Hubei and Anhui, has borne the brunt of the freezing conditions. On social media, Chinese people say the bitter cold spoiled their plans to reunite with family. They posted pictures of themselves stranded in trains and railway stations as power lines were cut. And away from the new year, we have more stories now for you in other parts of the world, but that will come up just after the short timeout. Please stay with us. And many thanks indeed for staying with us here on the program. More stories now. It has been 1 year since devastating earthquakes hit the northwest Syria and northeast Turkey, killing 55,000 people and injuring more than 130,000 and affecting approximately 15 million people in both countries. More than 577 tons of medical aid have been provided to Turkey and Syria over the past year, and more than $8 million in financial assistance has gone to health providers offering services to impacted patients. The quakes shook 11 provinces in southern Turkey and northern Syria. The devastating 7.8 magnitude earthquake and the aftershocks that followed reverberated through multiple provinces. The hundreds of thousands were displaced by dangerous and uninhabitable buildings and forced into temporary shelters. To mark what it calls the disaster of the century, the government arranged a series of events to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of the disaster in southern Turkey. Survivors left flowers and observers a few moments of silence to mourn the victims. Hundreds have gathered across provinces comforting one another as they remembered incidents from the day. Meanwhile, the UN Humanitarian Agency has warned that the plight of millions of displaced people and that of their hosts has deteriorated. The World Health Organization, WHO, reported that the consequences of the catastrophe will last many years to come, with a lot of people continuing to live in temporary shelters.
Turkey is one of the world's largest refugee host countries, while Syria, where millions had been displaced by the 13-year-old crisis even before the earthquakes hit, is suffering a severe economic crisis. In Syria, an estimated 90% of the population live in poverty. 12.9 million are food insecure, and 7.2 million are internally displaced. Turkey hosts 3.4 million refugees, and the earthquake impacted a region that is home to some 1.75 million of them. Despite Turkey's impressive and inclusive humanitarian response, supported by NGOs, the UN, and international community, the impact of the earthquakes is still being felt by both refugees and their Turkish hosts. The catastrophe has already taken an excruciating toll on the mental and emotional well-being of a long-suffering population. Many have lost family members and friends. Almost 60,000 deaths were reported in the two countries as a result of the earthquakes, with tens of thousands injured and entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble.
In Turkey, the earthquake created new and urgent health needs in the communities affected, including both host and refugee populations. The disaster disrupted access to health services, including maternal and newborn health care, vaccination, non-communicable disease management, mental health support, disability, and rehabilitation services. The disaster resulted in massive infrastructure damage, displacement, and wreaked havoc on the economy. Increasing tensions within the country and the region continue to exacerbate the already precarious health situation of nearly 15 million people across the country.
After the earthquakes, we saw the lowest levels of hostilities in a decade and fresh diplomatic attention to the Syrian tragedy. This, however, did not translate into real progress. Tragically, 2023 later saw the worst eruptions of violent conflict in years, further exacerbating the worsening humanitarian situation and a lack of meaningful progress on the political process.
And let's take you to Portugal, where farmers have used tractors to block at least 3 roads linking Portugal to Spain on Thursday, joining Europe-wide protests over a range of grievances from cheaper imports to insufficient state aid and bureaucracy. The government has announced emergency aid worth €500 million for farmers to try to avoid the kind of mass protests causing disruption in France and Brussels. But a small group of farmers, feeling underrepresented in public discussion on the issue, contacted each other on social media and decided to take actions. Starting at dawn, hundreds of farmers with tractors and other vehicles made their way slowly to the 4 main crossing points to neighboring Spain. And road police said 2 Portuguese highways had been cut in both directions close to the borders with Spain, in Villamorso in the north and Cai in the south, as well as a smaller national motorway in the region of Alentejo. And West Africa's regional bloc, ECOWAS, is calling on the political class of Senegal to take steps urgently in restoring the electoral calendar in accordance with the country's constitution. In a statement released, the Commission of the Economic Community of the West African States advises authorities to hold the presidential elections this month as scheduled, instead of delaying it by 10 months. Senegal's presidential election has never been rescheduled. The Constitution does not empower the Constitutional Council, the highest election authority, to reschedule the vote in certain circumstances, including the death and permanent incapacity or withdrawal of candidates. This crisis comes at a time when the West African bloc is struggling to retain its members. 3 coup-hit nations pulled out last week after accusing it of inhumane sanctions in response to military takeovers. Meanwhile, the federal government here in Nigeria has reiterated its commitments to tackle insecurity across the country with renewed vigor in various counter-insurgency operations. And Vice President Kashim Shettima made this pledge during the induction ceremony of 129 Attack Combat Helicopter and B-Craft King Air 360ER at the air base in Makurdi, the Benue State capital, along with a cargo plane to support air power operations in the fight against insurgency.
The 2 newly acquired combat helicopters, the T-129 Attack and the B-Craft King Air 360ER, are unveiled at the Air Force Base Makurdi, Benue State, for induction into the Nigerian Air Force counter-insurgency operation. Vice President Kashim Shettima, who is a special guest, is received by Governor Hyacinth Alia of Benue State, and he proceeds to inspect the parade mounted in his honor. The Chief of Air Staff and the Minister of Defense briefed the Vice President on the capabilities of the new platforms and places a demand on the optimum utilizations of the tool.
This event bears glowing testimony of the federal government's unwavering resolve to equip and energize the Nigerian Air Force and indeed the entire armed forces of Nigeria towards combating terrorism, armed banditry, oil theft, and other threats to the nation's territorial integrity and the security of its people. The attack helicopters are part of the 6 earlier ordered for the Nigerian Air Force, with the remaining 4 expected to be delivered by June this year.
The aircraft being inducted today costs the nation huge sum of money to purchase. As such, you must abide by the training you acquire in the maintenance of those machines, as well as ensure robust safety practices to sustain their serviceability status in order for the nation to derive maximum benefit from them.
The Vice President says that the induction is one of the many unwavering resolves of the federal government to combat insecurity.
Indeed, our solemn commitment to safeguarding Nigeria's security hinges upon the realization that without vigilant attention to the needs of our armed forces, who are saddled with the maintenance of peace, law, order, and stability, anarchy and lawlessness will surely prevail. The acquisition of these platforms was therefore necessary for improved delivery of robust air power in support of the ongoing counter-terrorism and counter-insurgency efforts, as well as encountering other security challenges.
He proceeds to induct the aircraft amid cheers, even as the combat T-129 attack helicopter went on to demonstrate its capabilities and air agility. Governor Alia commends the federal government and expresses the hope for increased impetus against violent crimes and insurgency.
I think with the induction of this number of fleets today, it's going to add even more value. It's a pivotal point to let a strong, resilient army and people of the armed forces to know that the entire nation is with them. The president is fighting with them, and it's for them, and it's with them.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. Tajuddin Abbas, led members of the National Assembly to the historic induction ceremony to show solidarity.
And to other stories around the continent, at least 14 soldiers have died in the DRC and 500 others have been affected by a cholera outbreak in southeastern Katanga province. The army confirmed the deaths on Tuesday during a meeting with a delegation from the UN Children's Fund office. According to Jed Eddie Kapeng, commander of the 22nd Military Region, Mura Military Training Center, the outbreak was caused by unsanitary conditions at the military camp. In July 2023, a cholera outbreak in Kalemi in neighboring Tanganyika province left at least 10 people dead. You're watching The World Today. We have more stories for you in just a moment. Please stay with us. And we are back on the program. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, has met with displaced families in Sudan who were uprooted from their homes by ongoing conflict in the country. Now, many of them live in displacement camps across the country and are in need of life-saving assistance and protection.
10 months after conflict erupted in Sudan, nearly 8 million people have been displaced, both in the country and across borders, into Chad, South Sudan and Egypt, Central African Republic and Ethiopia. The conflict in Sudan has pushed the country's economy to its knees and collapsed the healthcare sector. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, visited Ethiopia and Sudan to draw attention to the ongoing conflict and its effects on displaced families. Mr. Grandi met internally displaced families in Port Sudan and Kassala in eastern Sudan, where he listened to their concerns and called for further support from the international community.
I miss my mother and siblings. I want to return to my home. Since the fighting doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon in Khartoum, I would rather leave my country permanently. There is no stability or peace. What is more important than having peace? It doesn't matter what situation you are in. You need peace and stability. That's all.
The majority of families are scattered in displacement camps across the country and are forced to depend on aid and the generosity of fellow Sudanese who have also been affected by the crisis.
And what you can see here in the back is a relatively small site hosting a few dozens people. There are hundreds and hundreds of encampments like this throughout the country. Many displaced people are living with relatives, with friends, in crowded accommodation.
In recent months, the fighting has escalated with the seizure of Sudan's second city of Wad Madani in Al Jazeera state by the Rapid Support Forces. The city had been hosting hundreds of thousands of people displaced from Khartoum and elsewhere who were forced to flee for a second time.
والله يعني أنحنا
We lost our nation. Our lives were blessed, but at least we're still alive, thanks to God. The fighting in Khartoum shocked the whole country. Khartoum is the center of it all. The conflict has affected prices and put everything on hold. May God stop the war so everyone can go back to their homes. Our country is suffering. There is no peace.
In Gedaref and Kassala states, displaced people fleeing Khartoum, Al Jazeera, and other conflict areas continue to arrive.
It is important to reiterate our call, especially to the military leaders here in Sudan. They have to go back to peace talks. They have to go back to a meaningful peace track, at least starting with a ceasefire so that people can go back to their homes, the millions of those that have been displaced. And then in the meantime, while this complex political exercise goes on, it is crucial to provide basic assistance to all those affected, to refugees, to displaced, to those hosting them that often have very few resources, and to work with the local authorities, with the federal authorities to support these people.
UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, continues to provide counseling for refugees and IDPs on asylum procedures, resettlement options, legal and financial assistance, and medical referrals in Kassala. In a recent statement, UNHCR described the humanitarian situation in Sudan as dire and expressed concern that the fighting could spread further to other parts of the country.
And a bit of entertainment in a move to promote African music in the Middle East, Nigerian creative scales Ikomboy and Caesar Empire joined their African and Caribbean counterparts at the TC 554 cultural event in Dubai. The community event brings together fashion designers, musicians, African food experts to exercise soft power in favor of the continent and her people in diaspora. Our correspondent, Maiwa Adegoke, has more.
Music stars from Africa and the Caribbean gather at the TC54 Community Fest in Dubai, promoting their music and making new inroads in the Middle Eastern region. The event features live painting from Nigerian artist Caesar Empire, as well as African-inspired fashion from multiple designers.
What TC54 represents is our originality, our diversity, our energy, our vibe, our style that nobody else can imitate. It's something that's special about us, and it's us telling the best of Africa through music, through food, through fashion, the arts and all the works. It's the authenticity of the African brand. That's right, that's right, that's right. Come on now.
Rapper Hillary is first to entertain the crowd with his first ever music performance as an artist. The event provides him an opportunity to showcase his talent in the city where he has now lived for 17 years.
How it feels, it's nerve-wracking, you know, that's the honest truth, but at the same time it's very satisfying, you know, like, because it's part of a dream coming true, right? It's going to start somewhere in an amazing platform with beautiful people around, so truly appreciative of that.
Angolan songstress Noor takes over with an electrifying performance that gets music lovers on their feet.
My trip has been a blessing, you know. I'm really grateful to be here because I'm pretty sure that other artists that would like to be in the position that I'm right now. And I'm just like really enjoying all the people, like, you know, meeting the All Africa Festival, you, my manager Aliyah, Nina as well, Tonya. So all these people like contributed for this trip, and this experience. So I'm really, really grateful to be here.
Armed with her guitar, South Africa-based singer-songwriter Berita belts out beautiful ballads before joining an all-star panel conversation with more artists, including Scales, Ikomboy, Dauda, and Herlim, who discuss opportunities for African talents in global markets.
I also believe in collaboration also, collaborating with like all these artists, that you feel like they have potential, helping them, supporting them in whatever way you can. I've done my best also, like I'm an artist and I just do whatever I can do for them, and the rest is, history. It just keeps multiplying, the other artists sees another one, and it just keeps going. So basically, I mean, platforms like All Africa, what All Africa is doing already, I feel like it's perfect, because just today alone, it was this lady performing, right, when I walked in. Nude. Yeah, she's amazing, I just discovered her, and that's because of this platform.
While it is important to maintain ambition because of the fire that comes from having a personal ambition, we should see how we should put ambition second place to community. So have a more community-based mindset and understand that everything you're doing now is not just for you, but for the future as well. That's what comes to my mind.
More music, this time from DJ Mendy, who closes the show on a high note.
And to other stories, the Nigerian High Commission in South Africa is warning Nigerian football fans to refrain from boisterous celebrations if their team wins. That warning was intended to prevent the provocation of xenophobic attacks by frustrated South African supporters. But South Africa says that this has only created false alarm. There has been a long-standing rivalry between the two footballing giants, the Super Eagles of Nigeria and the Bafana Bafana of South Africa. But in a statement on Tuesday, South Africa's Department of International Relations and Cooperation said there was no history of soccer hooliganism among South Africans at matches against Nigeria. Nigeria has yet to respond to the statements from South African officials. In recent years, South Africa has seen a wave of xenophobic attacks against Africans who have moved there from elsewhere in the continent, often for better economic opportunities. In a statement earlier on Tuesday, Nigeria's diplomatic service said it was issuing the warning because it had seen evidence of veiled threats by South Africans online. And the dreamy image of a polar bear drifting to sleep on a bed carved into iceberg is the winner of the 2023 Wildfire Photographer of the Year People's Choice Award. A British amateur photographer, Nima Sarikani, who captured this stunning moment after days on the expedition vessel of Norway's Svalbard, said, quote, "This photograph has stirred strong emotions in many of those who have seen it. Whilst climate change is the biggest challenge we face, I hope that this photograph also inspires hope. There is still time to fix the mess we have caused," end quote. And Douglas Gurry, director of London's Natural History Museum, which hosts the yearly competition, says, open quote, "Nima's breathtaking and poignant image allows us to see the beauty and fragility of our planet." The museum says more than 50,000 photographs were entered into the competition last year, of which 25 were shortlisted by a panel of judges. And the Natural History Museum said Icebird was chosen as the winner by 75,000 members of the public, a record number in the competition. And that does it for us here on The World Today. Thanks indeed for watching. I am Kelly Egiga. Bye now.